Commissioner Morondo, Commissioner Pava. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Commissioner Faulkner, can you lead the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, the next matter.
Chair Clow, I just want to interrupt. I'm sorry, since I just got on Zoom, Commissioner Morondo is on Zoom, so I will now promote him so he can participate in the meeting online. Thanks.
Thank you. So the minutes will reflect he's present. So the next matter is the approval of the agenda. Does staff have any amendments to the agenda?
Evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have one change. I would like to move items 4 and 5 to after item 9. We have just a conflict with the meeting happening with with the case planner.
Okay, item 9 is postponed until May 4th.
Okay, I apologize. The last case,
Item 7.
item 7. Thank you.
Okay, great.
And Chair Clow, and members of the commission, I do have a few amendments to the findings of fact and conclusions of law that are on the agenda for tonight.
Okay, so let's move first to the approval of the minutes. So as to the May 2nd, 2023 minutes, are there any?
Point of order, Chair Clow, can we approve the agenda first?
Sure.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Commissioner Lucero,
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
Am I missing somebody? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Lawrence.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion has been approved.
Thank you. Okay, next, the approval of the minutes of May 2nd, of March 2nd, I'm sorry, 2023. Does staff have any changes to those minutes?
Chair Clow, no changes for the minutes.
Do any of the commissioners have any changes to those minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Commissioner Lawrence,
Abstain as I was not at the meeting.
thank you. Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Faulkner,
Abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Commissioner Lucero,
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Okay, next, we're moving to findings of facts and conclusions of law. First is case number 2023-6271, which is 507 and 511 Paseo de Peralta Development Plan. Any changes by staff?
Yes, Chair Clow, I do have a few additions to the findings of fact for case number 2023-6271 for the findings of fact. I've shared those with the commissioners and can read those into the record now if you like.
Yes, yes, please read them
Okay.
into the record.
Okay. So under the findings of fact, we added a item number 2 to read per SFCC section 14-7.2F, increase in maximum density in R12, R21 and R29 districts adopted by ordinance number 2013-16, section 41. The portion of the development plan zoned R21 at 511 Paseo de Peralta is required to request approval from the Planning Commission for a density above 10 dwelling units per acre as allowed in table 14-7.21 table of dimensional standards for residential districts, period. And then we also, under findings of fact, we added item number 14, SFCC 1987, section 14-72F sets out factors that shall be considered by the commission in evaluating the proposed increase in maximum density. And then under conclusions of law, we added item 4 to read, based on the factors contained in SFCC 1987, section 14-72F, the increase in maximum density shall be approved.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any changes to the findings and conclusions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. There a second?
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes, and I would like to note for the record that I reviewed the case materials and the minutes of the meeting.
thank you. Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes, and I reviewed same as Commissioner Lawrence.
thank you. Commissioner Lucero,
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Okay, next are findings of facts and conclusions of law in case number 2022-4942-2339 Boltoff Road rezoning. Does staff have any changes to those minutes? Those findings and conclusions?
Yes, Chair Clow, I do have a few edits to the findings of fact for case number 2022-4942. On line item 6, under findings of fact, we've changed the date. It reads currently on line November 3rd, so that should be June 2nd. So it would read, on June 2nd, the commission voted to recommend that the governing body approve the request for rezoning from R1 to R2 for case number 2022-4942, et cetera. And then on item 7 as well, subsequent to the June 2nd, 2022 commission hearing. So those dates should be changed on those lines. And then additionally, under the conclusions of law, item 7, it's on page 3. The word in the third sentence of item 7 should be changed from grown to growth.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any changes to those findings and conclusions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes, noting again that I reviewed all the materials.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner
Yes.
Faulkner, Commissioner
Yes.
Lucero,
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Okay, there's no old business, so we'll move to new business. Matter 1, which is the Chapter 14 text amendment, Chapter 14 authority for HDRB to approve exceptions has been postponed to May 4th. We'll move now to case number 2022-6201 Windmill Hill at La Placitas Compound Preliminary Subdivision Plat, and case number 2022-6202 Windmill Hill at Las Placitas Compound Variance. So staff.
Good evening, Chair Clow and Commissioners. I'm here to present the cases 2022-6201 and 2022-6202 for the preliminary subdivision plat and variance at 623.5 Garcia Street. This is located as an R3 district and is in the overlay for the Downtown and East Side Historic District. I can't find my screen. The applicant did comply with the pre-application meeting on September 29th, 2022, the ENN meeting. The ENN meeting on November 15th, 2022. That show, okay, thank you. That will help. And they also, complied with the notice requirements. Staff is unable to support the variance request as it does not meet the approval criteria to the standards of SFCC 14-9.21 of Chapter 14. Therefore, staff recommends denial of case 2022-6201, Windmill Hill subdivision at 623.5 Garcia Street, preliminary subdivision plat, and denial of case 2022-6202, Windmill Hill subdivision, variance at 623.5 Garcia Street to the variances to SFCC 14-9.21. However, should the Planning Commission choose to approve the requests, the Planning and Land Use Department would request that the approvals be subject to I can't seem to work this tonight, I'm sorry. Would be subject to the conditions of approval and in the report and the I'm having a hard time tonight, I'm sorry. Technical corrections in Exhibit A, thank you. There are 15 conditions of approval in the staff report. The technical corrections are found in Exhibit A. Following standard practice, staff will provide the applicant red line comments, and the applicant will make any necessary changes to comply with the conditions of approval and technical corrections and submit the corrected plan sheets to the case manager to collect staff signatures. Should the Planning Commission approve the variance and subdivision, the subdivision plat shall be recorded prior to any vertical construction. 623.5 Garcia Street is currently 1.48 acre lot in an R3 zoning district that also lies within the downtown and east side historic district. There's a single family residence and a historic windmill on the southern end of the property. Neighboring lots include both R3 and R4 zoning districts. This is our historic home right here, and the windmill is actually right here. The subdivision will include 3 lots, lot 1 at 0.5 acres, lot 2 at 0.6 acres, and lot 3 at 0.38 acres, which creates a density of R3. The planned development will include 2 additional residences and yard walls, which are not yet designed. However, the property is within the downtown and east side historic district, so new construction and remodeling will be subject to Historic Districts Review Board approval. Access to the proposed subdivision is off of Garcia Street via a series of private easements. I'm going to go through those for you. So there is a 29-foot wide easement here. It is approximately 218 feet. There's a 20-foot easement here, which runs approximately 118 feet. There's a 38-foot wide easement that goes through here. This is an entrance into the property. It is 15 feet. And this is 20 feet up.
Excuse me, we can't see anything that you're pointing at.
Oh,
You're
my
here,
mouse
here,
doesn't show. Okay, sorry.
Where?
Can I come to the board with that help? This one, how does that sound? Okay. See if I can do this again. So your 29-foot wide easement is here. This is the 20-foot easement here. This turns into 38 feet. This easement leads onto the property. It is 15 feet wide, and this leads onto the property at 20 feet wide. There are currently 21 residences using the existing access easement. There are 2 additional residences planned. So there will be a total of 23 using this access. Accesses which serve 0 to 30 dwelling units are required to be 38 to 42 feet in width and have design standards. So I just said that, but the design standard is that this lane should have 2 9-foot wide drive lanes, 2-foot curb and gutter, 5 foot of landscaping, and 5 foot of sidewalks on either side. In this case, the curb and gutter, landscaping, and sidewalks do not exist, and with the existing widths will not be able to be installed. The variance request is to have the narrower lane without the design required, but only having drive lanes. Though not all criteria for the subdivision plat are considered to be met at this time, this is due to the need for the variance. If the variance to the lane width is approved, the plat for the subdivision can be approved as it will meet all criteria as long as the variance is approved. Access to the proposed subdivision does not conform to the standards of SFCC 14-9.21 design criteria for street types, which requires a minimum right-of-way width of 38 feet for access to 0 to 30 dwelling units. The new subdivision does meet the density proposed by the future land use map and meets the general plan policy of infill development. This conflict and the increase in an existing nonconformity are the main reason for staff's recommendation for denial of the variance and subdivision. Staff recognizes that the request is similar to the case from 2012 for subdividing the same lot, which was approved by the Planning Commission in 2012. Staff has made a differing recommendation at this time based off of code interpretation and intent, with the understanding that continuing to make more narrow lanes for increased numbers of residences increases risk and diminishes the city's responsibility for public safety. Thank you very much. Staff, including members of the design review team, are available for questions tonight, and I stand for questions.
Ms. McCully, I have a couple questions. So the most narrow point of the road is 20 feet, is that correct?
Yes.
So it would accommodate the requirement of an 18-foot driving.
Yes.
So the problem is the sidewalk and the gutters and curb, is that correct?
Yes.
And none of those exist at this point in time at all.
Correct.
And in 2012, when approval was granted, has the code changed since 2012, or is it the same code requirements?
It's the same code requirements.
Any of the other commissioners have any clarifying questions of Ms. McCully? Yes, Commissioner Lucero.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, with as old as Santa Fe is, it seems like there's probably a lot of instances where just because of the old roads where emergency vehicles can't really get in and out to some properties here and there. And I just wondered if you were aware of any workarounds that the city uses to access these types of properties.
There are regulations for sprinkling systems that are for newer builds that are not accessible from the road. And in this case, they're also going to be providing turnarounds for the fire trucks on the property.
Thank you.
So, Ms. McCully, to clarify, a fire truck would be able to get into that property and turn around?
Yes, fire trucks require a 20-foot width is preferred.
So
And that's
the real
exactly-
issue is the sidewalks, the gutters, and
The design.
Commissioner Lawrence. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair Clara. I just wanted to clarify. So the code in 2012 was amended. So in that year, so it did have, when this case was processed, it had just been changed. So the old variance standards and approval criteria considered hardship on the part of the applicant. And so it had just been changed. So I just wanted to clarify that point. And there may have just been a kind of a different approach at that time based on that.
Based on the old code.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Lawrence. I'm sorry, Faulkner. Flattered.
Confuse me with.
That's good to hear.
So are there any other developments in the city where there's 20-foot streets and no sidewalks?
I actually don't know.
It's a trick question. There are. Yeah, there's
I would be surprised if there's not.
a lot, so several of the newer subdivisions have narrow streets with no sidewalks whatsoever. So, yeah, just wanted to point that out.
Commissioner Smith.
Chair Clow. What I'm struggling to understand is the recommendation is to turn it down. And then the advice is if we decide not to turn it down, we should do the following things which would mitigate the problem. What was the deciding factor to not recommend it be approved with all these conditions that would then mitigate the problem?
Right, Chair Clow, Commissioner Smith. So when we, are reviewing this and any other, development or intensity of development, we have to look at what the infrastructure is required to accommodate that development. And code is quite clear that, for roads, infrastructure serving 0 to 30 dwelling units, which this falls within, the lane standard is required. And, part of that is the health, safety, wellness, overarching kind of goals of Chapter 14 that we are charged to. And so some part of that is fire access, who participate in the review. Part of that is accessibility, sidewalks. Part of that is trees and plantings that, will improve, neighborhoods and, conditions for residents. So when we were looking at this, yes, fire is going to be able to get in and service, but there will be no accessibility for the residents. There will be no trees, additional plantings, those sorts of things. So, it is our interpretation that, they didn't meet the approval criteria. But it is up to you to make that final determination.
Ms. Moore, I noticed that criterion number 5 talks about that a plat should not be approved that creates a nonconformity or increases the extent or degree of an existing nonconformity with applicable provisions of the other chapters of the Santa Fe City Code, unless an exception is approved pursuant to the procedures. Are there any exceptions here that would allow us meeting that criteria?
Chair Clow, thank you. There were none that we could identify that staff could make, to approve that. And, it is the addition of the 2 additional units, that expand and increase the nonconformity, of course. And, and there are nonconformities all over the city. But when they come to, us requesting, to intensify or change or increase, this is the mechanism for us to make those improvements.
Thank you. Any other questions or clarifying questions from the commission? If not, we'll move to the applicant.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, I will go ahead and swear you in. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Dolores V. Hill, P.O. Box 1835, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87504. Good evening, Chair Clow, Commissioners. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you in person this evening, but Mr. Doug McDowell is in attendance and will be presenting this case. Mr. Michael Blum, the applicant, is also present. On that note, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. McDowell. And Lanny, if you could please allow me to share screen. Thank you.
Dolores, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
It's Doug McDowell. Address is 1317B Settle Gordo Road, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87501. Could you all humor me for a minute? I'll give you a little bit of history here, because I've been working on this road since 2007. On this driveway here. Actually, met my wife here 46 years ago when I was living here. In 2010, 11, I purchased this piece of property from Emmanuel Ramirez, who was from the O'Leary family, which originally this was all O'Leary compound, and developed the Las Placitas compound, which was the first gold LEED certified residential infill project on the east side. At that time, we gave 9 feet more to this easement here that increased it from 20 to 29. And at that point, the staff, which is not the staff these days, said they was on record that they would try and get another 9 feet along here in the future when these houses came up to possibly do so. Since then, Rose Trujillo in this house has passed away. It's been sold and has been remodeled. This house was sold and a new house was built there. And these were never, the 9 feet was never obtained. So this stayed at 29 feet. I do want to add that at 29 feet, there's quite a few trees and bushes and things like that have been planted along this roadway here. And this whole Las Placitas subdivision, the impact is actually very minor with all these trees now that have grown up that we planted during that time inside and on the edge of the subdivision as well. Cars can pass one another here. When we did get this approved, we had the fire marshal at the time to come up and look at it. And as we get into this, we've also had Geronimo come and visit. We've had fire truck drivers come and visit and help us with planning and things they may need moving forward. We did approach these 2 neighbors here, or these 3 neighbors, about widening this 20-foot easement here as a possibility. To widen this would take away all the parking at this property, and they were not wanting to do that. To widen to this side would take tearing down a 3 to 6 foot tall retaining wall. And to widen this would require quite a bit of moving of utilities underground and above ground. When we did this subdivision, we actually took down 6 telephone poles and buried all the lines in this whole neighborhood underground. So now in 2012 or 2011, I purchased this property here from the Schur family. And at that time, was not sure what we might do with it, but in thinking about slowly as we've worked our way through this over time, that this would be the end of the development we might do in the future and what would be the best way to do it. Since that time, I've had a couple of things happen in my life that prevented me from moving forward with it. And so I put it on the back burner after it was approved in 2012. One thing to be aware, I think that's very important, that now this roadway from here down and all the way around and into this property. It's a very narrow roadway, probably about 10 feet wide as it exists. It is a 34-foot wide easement. And it's going to be improved to city standards for that drive. So that starts right here. And all this, all the way to here will be improved that services all of these homes. For us, an emergency access will be developed or be left open here where fire could also get in this way as well to service the back side of these homes, the front side of these homes. The fact that we will be upgrading this road all the way from Garcia through the 20-foot section, widening down through here to city standards and bringing all this road up to grade, we feel that, or I feel that we are really improving this neighborhood to the point that it has great access for fire, safety, neighborhood access, walking, all those kinds of things. So it really, in many ways, and as things are planted over time, like they were here, that it will really end up creating probably one of the larger roadway accesses on the historic east side at this point. When we cut this road in, it started some of the ordinances that have been changed recently to how wide a roadway needed to be to access how many houses, because this road, when it originally got cut, was shockingly big as you drove up Garcia Street compared to the other ones in the neighborhood. And I agree. Although I agree with the staff that the code says what it says, and I appreciate all the help they've been with this. I really do feel that with these improvements down through here, leading into here, and the upgrading of the surfaces of these roads and the widening to the 20 feet here is going to give a very serviceable, safe neighborhood when it's all done. I have had Geronimo, the fire marshal, up here on fire drivers for trucks to look at this area as well. And they felt very positive about what they were doing, and it was an improvement for them as well. We will be providing fire turnarounds here. There's a hammerhead that'll be developed there. I think it's a really nice improvement to the neighborhood, and all we're really doing is adding. We were approved originally for 4. I feel it's too many for the property, and we agreed that we'd do 2 more here, and this is being left as a view corridor to help leave this open through here, leave this open through here, and this open through here for the development that happens. I think we've been sensitive not only to the neighbors' needs, all of who I know personally, but also to the concept of what we're trying to do on the east side and what's been important on the east side, and what originally the Historical Design Review Board review ordinance and many of these other ordinances written. I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions of Mr. McDowell?
Chair Clow. So exactly how long is the 20-foot bottleneck? Yeah, I can see it. That's okay.
Is that 118 feet.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. McDowell. And you can sit down. So we'll open this matter up for public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to comment on this project? If so, please come forward so you can be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Francis Meyer, 633 Garcia Street, Santa Fe 87505. Meyer is spelled M-A-I-E-R. Hi, thank you for having me here today. Thank you, Chairman Clow. I live at 633 Garcia Street, and I own another property right next door. I'm on the north side of the planned development of Windmill Hill. I'm strongly in favor of the proposed development. It's a wonderful neighborhood. It's a lane. People walk up and down it all the time. In fact, there's actually a trail system that winds in between homes back there that people are accessing all the time. There's no issue of it. It's not a throughput. I'm sure you know that. So there's no issue with traffic going back and forth. It's very lightly trafficked. It's more walked than anything else. And the lack of a sidewalk does not make any difference whatsoever. I have a lot of confidence in Doug and Mr. Bloom and their plan for the development. I think it will make the neighborhood even nicer. It would be a shame for that to actually not be enjoyed by anybody. And I urge you to approve the exceptions to pass this, to approve this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. Anyone else from the public?
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
I am Helen Rogers, and I live at 637 Garcia Street, 87505. Again, thank you for having us be able to support this development. My home is immediately adjacent to Fran Myers and to Windmill Hill, and the view easement is right in front of our property. We have long known since we established this view easement that there would be that the plan was that there would be 3 homes on this, and have been very supportive through time of the whole development. We know Doug McDowell. He in fact built our home. We know Michael and his wife and child, and feel very comfortable that they, as neighbors, Michael and his wife live next to us now, that they understand our neighborhood and the value of that neighborhood. As Fran said, people are walking up and down our road. There's a connection with a gate going on to San Antonio that people walk on. There's a public path that goes over to a beta that's between properties. This is an area that has all kinds of trees, landscaping in the homes all around that we all enjoy. So we're very comfortable and highly supportive of the effort to build the 3 homes on Windmill Hill, or 2 additional to the one that's there. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. And I just need to say that it's nice hearing neighbors supporting increased development as opposed to what we normally get. So it's refreshing. Anyone else from the public? Yes.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Patrick McDowell. I don't really have an address. I have a PO box, but I don't know it right now. My old address used to be 623.5 Garcia. I lived there for 9 years, and I know all the neighborhood. I know Michael very well. Obviously, my father, Doug. I've seen these plans for a long time. I've seen the development. I've lived on that street. I've enjoyed that street. And I think what they're doing is really going to add to the neighborhood. And it's, I think, going to be lovely. And, you know, if you walk just down to a beta, there's no sidewalks. You go 2 streets down by the elementary school, there's probably a 10-foot road, and there's about 15 houses back there. You can kind of walk that area, and it's all very small. I've explored that neighborhood far too much, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDowell. Anyone else from the public would like to comment? Do we have anyone on Zoom?
Chair Clow, I don't see anyone on Zoom who has their hand raised, so.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll close the public comment portion of this hearing, and we'll move to comments or questions from the commission. Any comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Clute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just interject. So I'd like to clarify that this secondary fire access that Mr. McDowell mentioned is not required by fire code. Want to be clear about that. And then I appreciate Ms. McCauley's comments on fire, but land use can't speak for the fire department. So we do have Geronimo Guerrero, the fire marshal, here on Zoom. If you all have any specific questions for her, or need any further clarification. Thank you.
I think it might be worthwhile to hear his opinion of this project in terms of public safety.
Good evening, Planning Commission. This is Geronimo. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Okay, I apologize. Yeah, so we did an in-person meeting with Mr. McDowell on this property, and then we did a site visit of the property as well, just to see how our apparatus approached the proposed development. And the 20-foot apparatus access road was an improvement. There was some discussion of raising a hydrant that's within the right-of-way, or I believe it's the right-of-way, for the property. The one concern I had was the approach to the existing houses where the primary access would be made. Secondarily, I think Mr. McDowell proposed that all these properties would be sprinklered with a PA 13D system. So we did a thorough review of the property from the life safety standpoint and our access. I think there was going to be some improvements to the all-weather road going in. So are there any specific questions that you'd like me to answer?
Yes, Commissioner Lucero.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm still unclear on where the turnaround point might be on the map for emergency vehicles getting in and out. I wonder if that could be clarified.
So between the two properties that are the priority access to the new development area, that would be considered a turnaround, utilizing that as a primary point to turn around a K-turn out of that proposed access point. It's called like a T-turn, but that's in Appendix D of the International Fire Code is an option. So the alignment of the K-turn or T-turn would be 70 foot from the center line of the alignment into the proposed T-turn access point would be, and then 120 foot wide, 60 foot either way. I'm sure Mr. McDowell may have an exhibit for that, but that's where we propose the K-turn.
Sarah,
T-turn.
would you like Mr. McDowell to show you on the map?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might interject, please, I apologize. That there's also an illustration showing the fire access on page 35 of the Exhibit E applicant submittal. If you all can find that. Your packet materials, thank you.
On this one here, this is going into the property for the new subdivision here. And this is the hammerhead here that's within. This has a 70 and the 120 feet here. In the existing roadway, which is here, where this road goes into Las Placitas compound, this is also a hammerhead here for coming out. And this road here that goes up into the subdivision has a hammerhead here as well. So there's actually 3 different spots. Is that clear? Okay, thank you.
Do any of the other commissioners have questions or comments? Commissioner Lawrence. Faulkner. God, why am I having a hard time tonight? It's this mask. It's this mask I have on. I
Uh,
can't think properly.
I would just say, this is like one of the places where I feel as a commissioner that it's good we're working on the code. Because I feel like this is another place where we're gonna probably have to rule for the bench, or at least have the opportunity to do so, which isn't the best way to do policy. But I think some of these things, I mean, to me, there's areas all over the city where there's no sidewalks and there's only 20-foot roads. And, we're looking at, we need housing. And so we're gonna have to start looking at it in a different way than we've been looking at it in the past. And density is one of the ways we do that. And when you do density, you're gonna lose some stuff, but we'll get housing out of it too. So that's the only comment.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I would have a question of the applicant.
okay, Commissioner Morondo. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understood from the application and your comments earlier, 2 points correctly. One is that the original improvement was 3 and 3 residences, and that's been reduced to 2. And the second point was that the area served by the later section of this road, can you speak to how many houses are on that area of road that's in the neighborhood of 10 feet? And what you're going to be able to improve it to?
Yes, Commissioner Miranda, and I need to try and understand a little bit more what you're asking in regards to how many houses are in a certain section. What section specifically are you asking about?
The section that where the existing road reduces, I thought you said the existing width was a neighborhood of 10 feet. So the road going around 633, 627, and then I believe as it passes through 627, and I don't know what the address of the property next to that is, but you talked about how that section would be improved. Is it going to be widened, or is it just improvement of the surface?
No, it's going to be widened to code required city standards from that point in. The only section that we will be able to do at 20 feet will be the area that's highlighted in red. But when I say improved, I'm saying it'll be resurfaced. There'll be a new topping on it. It'll be compacted, but the area beyond the red highlighted area will be widened to city standards and resurfaced to city standards as well, which services all the houses back there. Does that answer your question?
Do you know what the number without your added load, who's on that road? Specifically, after it winds around track C?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 12 with the addition of the 2 new units at 623 that we're requesting.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if you'd allow me to just make a comment then after my question.
Sure.
I suppose in this case, I completely agree with Commissioner Faulkner that, this is in sort of an interesting area of the code and ruling from the bench is not always great. But I suppose in this case, what's interesting to me is it's true we're increasing a nonconformity if we approve the variance, but the proportionality of that, the fact that we're adding a relatively small amount of load to the existing situation, and I think there's a strong argument that those 9 units, or those 9 residences have a safer situation because of this. And to me, that argument is the most compelling in this case, that this condition exists all over the city. And I think, for me at least, it's compelling that they're going to be improving the overall situation from what it exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Morondo. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Smith?
I just like to associate myself with Commissioner Faulkner and Commissioner Morondo, and at the same time, as we enter into a redoing of the code, thank the staff for pointing out things that aren't right in the code that need to be changed. We want to have affordable housing. If we want this place to be a place where a lot of different kinds of people can live, we've got to think differently. And so this is not a matter of rebuffing or accepting. It's a matter of thanking the staff for pointing out a problem, and at the same time, understanding that that's why we're having code revisions, and they haven't been revised in 25 years and times have changed.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Any other comments? If not, Commissioner Lawrence, are you ready to make a motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to make motions to approve these 2 actions. In order to do so, I want to get on the record replies to the criteria, so we make sure that those are addressed as part of the motion. So first, I do want to refer to, although the first motion is for the preliminary subdivision plat, first, I would like to refer to the criteria for the variance and those that are recommended as no within the staff report. The first is criterion 3, which states that the intensity of development shall not exceed that which is allowed on other properties in the vicinity that are subject to the same relevant provisions of Chapter 14. And in response, I would say that, and this is addressed in part in the staff text, but as interpreted as density of development, this intensity does not exceed that of the other properties in the vicinity. And while it may add 2 more units on this street, it is consistent with what we see and what is shown on the map in terms of the intensity of this tight tucked back units throughout this neighborhood. In response to criterion 4, which states that the variance is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land or structure, and cites factors including the consistency and purpose with the purpose and intent of Chapter 14, I would say for the record that I believe this is the minimum variance to make possible the reasonable use of the land consistent with the purpose and intent of Chapter 14, which does support this type of development and intensity in the neighborhoods in the general plan. And I'd also cite what my fellow commissioners have stated in their comments in that regard in support of what we support in the general plan and as the principles behind Chapter 14. And in response to criterion 5, that the variance is not contrary to the public interest, I'd say that that criterion is met because it is in the public interest to support more housing of this type in this location. Given those criteria, I believe that the other request for the preliminary subdivision plat would meet all of the criteria for that preliminary subdivision plat. And so my first motion will be to approve case 2022-6201, the Windmill Hill subdivision at 623.5 Garcia Street, preliminary subdivision plat, subject to the conditions of approval and technical corrections in the staff report.
Second.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Commissioner Lucero,
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
And my next motion would be to then approve case 2022-6202, Windmill Hill subdivision at 623.5 Garcia Street. Variance to SFCC 14-9.2-1, subject to conditions of approval and technical corrections.
Second.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Commissioner Lucero,
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move on to case number 2022-6102, Villas de los Saleros Unit 3 Preliminary Development Plan. And case number 2022-6103, Villas de los Saleros Unit 3 Preliminary Subdivision Plat.
Madam Chair, I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry, you redid that. And I wrote it down. Okay, so now we're moving along to case. So which we are doing number 7, number 6. Okay, so we're doing case number 2023-6258, the cluster housing at Monte Serrano Development Plan. And case number 2023-6260 Monte Serrano variance to subsection 14-8-2D1 and section D2B.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Madam Chair, members of the commission. This is case 2023-6258 cluster housing and Monte Serrano development plan. And 2023-6260, it's a variance to subsection 14.8.2 D1 and D2B. Staff is recommending approval with conditions of approval as outlined in this report. The applicant agrees to the conditions. There are 2 motions that will be required for this project. Approve or deny case 2023-6258 Monte Serrano Cluster Housing Development Plan, subject to conditions of approval and technical corrections recommended by staff. And approve or deny case 2023-6260 Monte Serrano Cluster Housing Development Variance to subsection 14.8.2 D1 and D2B, subject to the conditions of approval and technical corrections recommended by staff. The conditions are listed in table 1, conditions of approval. And also it should be attachment A for the technical corrections. The Monte Serrano Annexation Development Plan basically leads the way for many of the application requirements for density for the cluster housing. And what that means is when Monte Serrano was originally approved, the master plan allowed for specific developments. You had residential lots, you had a cluster development, and then you had a hotel. If the number of dwelling units within the residential dwelling units weren't filled, they can move those houses over to the cluster development and increase that actual density from the 46 cluster housing to whatever that value would be. As now, Montesano has developed a total of 212 single-family lots with an additional 52 lots awaiting for approval of the 322 total lots or houses allowed for Montesano. So the development plan will be 8 houses shy of that total. We have asked the applicant what they're doing to those 8 houses, and they basically said it can't fit anywhere. So I guess they're abandoning that. So the density for the cluster house is a value within the development agreement or the settlement agreement between the city and Montesano. The variance is to allow disturbance of 30% slopes of land, allow the hide and cut fill slopes in excess of terrain management standards, waiver from the current land use required to permit the installation of native trees and shrubs in place of street trees, to exceed the 15-foot maximum height for cuts and fills, and to allow a waiver of the standard road section and allow for the use of stabilized base course chip seal, as well as the use of roadside trail in lieu of sidewalks, and allow a waiver of the curb and gutter requirements. Again, the development agreement pretty much establishes that they have to go through the variance process, but each one of those sections identify that the city will grant those variances. So they're in line with the Montesano agreement. Staff's analysis finds that the applicant has addressed all the necessary findings per subsection 1438D approval criteria and conditions for the development plan, and for the variance of section 1482D1 and 2DB, they are agreeing. We are in line with the development agreement or the settlement agreement between the two. The development is broken up into 2 tracks that were originally established in the master plan. Most of the master plan has already had a final subdivision approval. Actually, all of it has a final subdivision approval. All they have to do is plat it. And these are the 2 tracks that will be platted when they submit it for filing. As you can see, they're surrounded by an abundance of open space and trails, and it's highly vegetated. So there's basically no change when this came forward for the hotel. This is just east of that hotel site that this planning commission just saw last year. The applicant has complied with the development plan approval criteria and necessary findings per section 1438D. And again, the variance has met the criteria of the agreement. With that, I guess I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Espinoza. Do any of the commissioners have any preliminary clarifying questions? If not, we'll move on to the applicant.
Hi. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Aristimuño, 171 Sangre de Cristo, Cedar Crest, New Mexico. And I'll be assisting with the presentation today, so I think we need to add Al Lilly.
Okay, Mr. Lilly, I will go ahead and swear you in as well. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Lilly?
Can you hear me?
Yes. You need me
There
to
we go.
Did you hear me swear you in?
I did. I agree.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Name is Al Lilly at 21 Club Holdings. Address is P.O. Box 31939, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87594. With that, I'd like to go ahead and make a presentation.
Go ahead, Mr. Lilly.
Good to go. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Mr. Escobar, and land use staff. First of all, I'd like to combine the presentations for both the hearing on the development plan as well as the variances. And I would like to thank Dan Esquivel for his assistance in during the planning process. You've already met Amrit Arustumuño, who's an associate of mine. He'll be assisting in the presentation and is present there, of course, tonight. Amrit, if you would pull up the first slide, that's the amended master plan that was done at the time of the resort. As Dan mentioned, 21 Club Holdings is requesting final development plan approval for the cluster housing for Monte Sereno. The subject property for the cluster housing comprises approximately 17 acres on 3 parcels of land, which have really been combined. Dan mentioned there were 2 parcels. Track C and D are connected, and then we have track E. The site is located west of Highway 285, north of Tano Road. It's in the northeast corner of Monte Sereno and is directly south of the Santa Fe Opera. Monte Sereno is a 600-acre residential resort master plan community located within the city limits. Its zoning is PRRC, Planned Resort Residential Community, the only such zone community and property in the city. A unique piece of property for many reasons, including its topography, the entitlements contained in the annexation and development agreement, and mature branding, which has led to a very successful and thriving community. Monte Sereno is governed by the annexation and development agreement, which Mr. Esquivel alluded to, dated in 1993. This memorializes the land development entitlements granted by the city of Santa Fe, and that included the 276 single-family estate lots, the 35-acre hotel, which was zoned originally for 250 hotel rooms, and 55 cluster. The Monte Sereno master plan was revised and approved with the resort, indicated that the cluster housing was located on these 3 parcels of land. However, these tracts have never been subdivided from tract M, which is the undeveloped remainder tract for Monte Sereno, and that this is being accomplished with the new subdivision plat, which will be handled through administrative approval. I'm going to, if you can pull up the next slide, which is the development plan that we're reviewing tonight. The cluster housing will involve a total of 50 units. There's 30 units located within the area previously identified as track C and D, which are directly east of the resort site. And maybe you can point those out, Amrit. All of these will be 2-story duplex townhomes with 2-car garages. An additional 20 condominium units will be located further to the east, and they're in the area identified as track E. These will involve 5 buildings. They're 2-story unit buildings, and they'll have 4 units in each building for a total of 20 more. That makes a total of 50 in all. There'll be 3 different home designs ranging in size of 900 to 1,200 square feet for the 4-unit buildings. On track D to 1,200 to 2,900 square feet for the townhomes located on track C and D. The architectural design can be described as soft contemporary Santa Fe style. And Amrit, if you can pull up the 3rd and 4th slides. These are the architectural renderings. These slides are meant to provide you with a flavor for the architecture being proposed. The first slide is up in front of you tonight. It illustrates the 30 housing units that will look like what it will look like on track C and D. These are 2-story duplex townhomes, which will appear as large homes carefully sited to maximize mountain views. None of these homes have been located in the Ridgetop district. The additional slides illustrate the 20 condominium units that are planned for track D. These plans are preliminary architectural designs on both of these tracks. The developer will have to submit detailed plans at the time of obtaining building permits. The draft set of design guidelines has been developed and will be part of the condominium declaration for the cluster housing, and these guidelines will ensure that the houses are compatible with the architecture throughout the Monte Sereno community. We'll bring back the development plan slide, please. Amrit. Due to the remote location of the cluster housing in the northeast section of Monte Sereno, it is anticipated that the proposed development will really have a minimal impact on the rest of the community of Monte Sereno. However, the cluster housing will have an impact on the resort site. It will be visible from the resort looking easterly. It will also have some impact on the lots that are just to the north side of Village Drive. Therefore, one of the goals of the development plan for the cluster housing is to recess the roads and the building pads. And we've done that approximately 4 feet by depressing the roads and the building pads. This will help to minimize the impact of those views. Earth tone colors, a depressed access road and building pads, appropriate landscape screening will all work to further minimize the view of those buildings. Site plan also proposes for the extension of the trail system for the resort. I'd like to point out that we really have in excess of 3 miles of trails either built already or planned to be built. And we will be adding to the trails between these tracks. If you look, you can see the dotted lines between track C, D, and E. Cluster housing on track C and D will be accessed via a new road leading from Village Drive and just east of the resort casitas. So you have to look up at the top of that plan there, and actually that road continues out and intersects Village Drive and comes in to serve those 30 cluster units at the top of the sheet. There'll be another access road down below, and that comes in and serves the other 5 buildings on track E. Both roads are proposed to be private with gated entries. It's anticipated that the north entry off of Opera Drive will serve as the main access point for the cluster housing development. You can bring up the preliminary development plan next, Amrit. I'd like to point out some improvements that we've made to the development plan. Note that the approved preliminary development plan included a serpentine separate access road leading up from Village Drive to the cluster housing. Maybe you can run your cursor along that, Amrit. And it continued up the hill. It served the cluster housing and it actually continued all the way up into the resort. As part of the land plan, this long serpentine road is eliminated and the access is gained via the shortened roads that I just described. We have also planned for more efficient building layout and fewer buildings, which reduce the area of disturbance on track C and D. This greatly reduced the amount of necessary tree clearing and grading. The additional advantage of the revised access is the addition of open space gained by vacating this right-of-way, plus the additional land that is no longer required for the development on track D. This amounts to a net gain of approximately 10 acres of land being added to the open space in this area. Now, if you can bring back the final development plan, Amrit. Part of this application, we are applying for final subdivision approval for the cluster housing tracts. And also the final subdivision tract, our plat will include the adjacent open space tract and the tract dedicated to the sewer lift station number 2. Zoning compliance, as previously stated, the property is zoned planned resort residential community. The cluster housing units are provided for in the A&D agreement are in conformance with the zoning, which encourages a variety of housing types. And also mentioned that we have some variance requests. These variances have been reviewed and recommended for approval by city staff and are part of this application. They are basically related to terrain and stormwater water management for road construction. Technically, they've already been approved in the annexation and development agreement. And they just relate to the mountainous terrain that we have in this area. In closing, I would like to just state our proof of substantial compliance with the preliminary development plan approval. As per section 3.1 of the annexation and development agreement, the developer has the vested right to develop the property in accordance with the approved plans, the A&D agreement, and the land uses permitted in the PRRC zone. The developers worked diligently to make certain that the proposed final development plan and the subdivision plat substantially conform to the city-approved plans and the applicable regulations. First of all, the buildings are located very close to the footprints shown on the preliminary development plan. Exact building placement has been dictated by the avoidance of steep slopes, which is consistent with terrain management regulations. Secondly, consistent with the annexation and development agreement, we've kept all development out of the Ridgetop Escarpment District. Third, the final development plan eliminates the access road, which was included in the preliminary development plan, and involves a more efficient building layout, resulting in 10 acres of land added to the dedicated open space. This too is consistent with sound land planning practices and the current terrain management regulations. The total density of the cluster homes that is being requested, as Dan mentioned, is less than what we're entitled to. You could actually get that up to 58 units, and we have dropped that back to 50 in terms of how that fits on the property. Finally, section 3.2 of the A&D agreement states that the city shall approve final development plans and final subdivision plats or phases thereof, provided such plans and plats substantially conform to the approved plans and applicable regulations. We feel that we have definitely met these requirements. I would like to state that we are in agreement with the conditions of approval as presented by city staff. And in closing, I'd say that I'm happy to answer any questions that the commissioners may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lilly. Do any of the commissioners have preliminary questions before we open it up to public comment? Commissioner Smith.
Commissioner Clow. I did read through all this, and I just like to hear in your words how, whether it's captured in the original agreement that led to the first stage or not, how you are addressing the issues of affordable housing in this development, which is clearly an upper scale development.
Actually, the affordable housing requirement is met in the annexation and development agreement. I don't have that in front of me, but it's paid for at the time of building permit application.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Espinoza.
Esquivel.
I'm sorry.
I just want to make a minor correction. The lots that Al was talking about, they're already pre-approved. All we're doing is platting the existing approved lots. So there's no subdivision being created at this point in time.
And how were the affordable housing being met? Was there a requirement for affordable housing in this development?
That's Nancy Long. Are you available, Nancy, to answer that question?
Yes, she is.
Thank you.
You swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Nancy Long and my address is 1800 A Old Pecos Trail in Santa Fe. And the affordable housing requirement is met for all of Monte Sereno. There's no fee required for the resort, but for the subdivision lots as well as the cluster housing, it's a 2% fee based upon the lot price sale. And as Al indicated, that's paid at the time of the building permit.
Commissioner Smith.
Commissioner Clow. That's what I remember. I think that is in the document. Is there a way to calculate or estimate what that's going to be, or are we just flying blind?
Yes, Madam Chair and Commissioner Smith, I don't know that there is a way to calculate that, as this is in just the stages of getting the development approval. And I don't know that there's any prices yet that we could base that kind of fee on that they may be planning to develop this at.
Thank you, but it's 2% of the gross.
Yes.
That's in the record.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to comment on this development request?
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Rick Martinez, 725 Mesilla Road. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioners, for letting me speak on this issue. I've was kind of shocked when I heard there's no affordable units on this and they're only paying 2%. I thought that was kind of disgusting. You have the Summit, which is up on old High Park Road, which is a very, very big development, and they have affordable units up there. When I heard of cluster housing, I thought, oh, we're gonna get at least one affordable house because they're building a hotel. At least a worker can have a place to live, to go back and work. But yet I hear they're not gonna do that. And it's just kind of disgusting that the fee in lieu of is paid out on this. And, and even I always thought that if you build 10 units, you have to provide something. You have to provide housing because these are houses that are for sale, not for rental. So I always figured that that's an important part of what the city came about to fight this affordable housing, to get affordable housing in Santa Fe. And then the other thing on top of that too, is we're using city water for the development too. So there should be some kind of payback, a better payback than what we're getting now. 2% is really nothing when it comes down to it. Maybe they can turn around and buy a house for somewhere in Santa Fe to show that they are supporting something. But reach out and do a little better job than what they're doing for this development. I mean, it's a high-end development. We're city water. There's a code that says you have to have, if you build 10 over 10 units, you have to provide one. But 2% is really nothing. I know this contract was written years ago, but it can always be renegotiated, and it should be renegotiated for the future. And if we allow developments like this that come in, luxury developments, without making sure that there is at least one or two affordable units in there, the city we're not getting anywhere with affordable units in the city. So I hope you guys make some pressure to make them do something more. Like you said, buy a house here in town in town. If it can be up there, buy it there. But if there's building one they're building a hotel, build one so that the people that are working at the hotel can live and walk to work. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Is there anyone on Zoom, Ms. Moore?
Chair Clow, I do not see any hands up on the Zoom right now.
So at this point, we'll close the public hearing and open it up for questions and comments by the commissioners. Ms. Faulkner?
Yes. So I am a little confused about the 2%, the number of units. And then one of the concerns I have also is, how do we know that 2% is adequate to make up for affordability or the loss of affordability if we don't even know what the end profit will be or the end gross amount will be on the sales? It seems like we're kind of making a deal when we're flying blind, basically, in the situation, and we're being asked to agree to something that we have no idea whether or not it's going to be effective and really serve the purposes intended to do.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, unfortunately, this was a lawsuit that was settled many years ago. We're bound by that lawsuit even today. So it's not an issue of negotiation based on what's already been set. It's more of compliance to the regulations or to the agreement that was made many years ago. So that's what we're stuck with this settlement agreement, which is the annexation and development, which is the settlement agreement. We don't really have a choice in how it was done many years ago, just like the variance criteria. We're subject to the terrain management regulations of 1997, as opposed to the regulations that we're doing today. We don't have a choice because that was just what they settled on back in the day.
Okay, so this is an issue of the code. It's
not a code issue. It's It's based on a lawsuit that the city lost many years ago, and this was the settlement agreement that now takes precedent for the development of Monte Sereno. We settled.
We settle.
My bad, we settled. We didn't lose, we settled.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Lawrence,
I'll make the motion to approve case 2023-6258, the Monte Sereno Cluster Housing Development Plan, subject to the conditions of approval and technical corrections recommended by staff.
there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Commissioner Lucero,
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
And I'll also make a motion to approve case 2023-6260, the Monte Sereno Cluster Housing Development Variance to subsections 14-8.2 D1 and D2B, subject to the conditions of approval and technical corrections recommended by staff.
Second.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Faulkner, Commissioner Lucero, Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you.
We thank you for your consideration tonight.
Okay, we'll now move on to case number 2022-8102. Villas de los Soleros, Unit 3, Preliminary Development Plan. In case number 2022-6103, Villas de los Soleros, Unit 3, Preliminary Subdivision Plat. Ms. Lomboy.
Good evening, Chair Clow, members of the commission. This evening, I'm going to be providing a little bit of background with reference to Villas de los Soleros. It's sort of a long story, and you all have actually seen a similar case to this before. With reference to the request that is going to be heard tonight, it is related to a development plan at the intersection of Governor Miles Road and Rail Runner Road. They're highlighted in yellow for you. Also, that is items that are pending is general plan amendments from low density residential to medium density residential, a rezoning with to residential 10 dwelling units per acre, and the master plan amendment to move this property from a low density residential category to medium density residential districts. So with reference to those items, these cases were heard by the Planning Commission last year, and they were denied by the Planning Commission. There were concerns specifically with the preliminary site plan, or I'm sorry, preliminary development plan, and the density of the homes and the setbacks. And one of the references was the quality of life. There were concerns with the development not meeting that criteria in the development plan. So just to also give you an update on the council, so the applicant did go ahead and proceed to council regardless of the fact that the development plan had been denied, which is not acted on the council unless it's an appealed. That development plan was not appealed, preliminary development plan, but the applicant went ahead and stated their case to the city council later last year. And the general plan amendment, the rezoning, and the master plan amendment were postponed by the council. There was a lot of discussion about the appropriate zoning districts. With reference to the zoning district, an R6 zoning category has very specific prescriptive setbacks and does not allow for these types of units, the paired homes. And so the applicant needs to rezone either way to have this development. And only the R7, 8, 9, and 10 zone districts permit setbacks to be determined by the Planning Commission via the development plan. So that is why the rezoning was being sought. The city council expressed concern about not knowing what was being proposed. There was a lot of discussion between the council, Mr. Patton, and the applicant team about how it would look, and the city council did not feel comfortable rendering a decision without the Planning Commission having heard a revised plan first. So here we are. This is the development plan for 40 dwelling units. Just to provide an overview of the requests, some of which one of which you're considering. This is the vicinity of the general plan amendment, or I'm sorry, the general plan categories. So right now it's residential, low density residential. You can see that it's medium density residential across the street, where filings 1 and 2 of the Villas de las Saleras are almost done with construction. Community commercial to the north, and then there's the park for Las Saleras along the Arroyo Chamizo. And let me go back to this aerial just to provide a relationship with the property as it's going to relate with the existing development. The entrance into the proposed development will align with this roadway here, the main entrance into the existing Villas de las Saleras. And there is temporary detention in that area now that was part of the construction project. And so that's going to be removed, and the detention for the subject property is going to be at the southern. So I think it was construction staging as well as other stormwater.
Pardon me, Ms. Lamboy. Once again, if you're using a cursor, we can't see it. So if you say here, please explain where you're referring to.
I'm sorry. I did not realize that you couldn't see it. So the roadway the primary roadway, which is Redondo, that goes into the existing Villas de las Saleras development, directly across the street will be the main access point for the subject development area. And there will be an emergency access point that will be slightly south of the roundabout as well. The detention is planned to be the southernmost portion of the site. Does that help? Great. All right, moving on to the rezoning. The existing zoning category is R6. It was intended as part of the Las Saleras master plan to be a transition between higher density neighborhoods to lower density neighborhoods. You can see to the east, it's predominantly large lot, single family detached units. However, the applicant has decided that the same product would be advantageous or would be appropriate for this tract of land. And so is proposing a lower density than the project of the Villas de las Saleras phases 1 and 2 across the street. So it will be a lower density of 5.8 dwelling units per acre. And the master plan amendment, I've gone over this a little bit as well. You can see highlighted in red up there, it would go from R6 to R10 or medium density residential. Here's a view of the site. So the finding at the previous planning commission meeting and the discussion included the setbacks and distance between buildings, the availability of parking for residents and guests, the private yard side for each unit, and access to community amenities. And there was concern that there were no on-site amenities. And like I stated previously, the previous decision was to recommend denial to the governing body for all of the general plan rezoning and master plan amendments. And then as the planning commission is the final authority on the preliminary development plan and the preliminary subdivision plat, that was denied. And that was never appealed to the governing body. So with reference to the development plan layout, you can see here that the homes will be facing, the fronts of the homes will be facing similar to the fronts of the homes that are further to the west on Governor Miles Road. So there'll actually be presence on both Governor Miles and Rail Runner in terms of the architectural 360-degree architectural ornamentation and detailing. There are some units that are along private drives on the eastern portion of the site. And there are some green spaces towards the south. Now, predominantly the one that is furthest most south is the detention area. But there are also, as a condition of approval, staff has asked the applicant to amenitize the space that is just to the east of the cul-de-sac on the north-hand side of that cul-de-sac, the southern cul-de-sac, so that it has, a pocket park type of feel. Oh, also, there will be access to the park amenities also in the first phases of the Villas de las Saleras across the street. One of the discussion points during the development plan review process was that emergency access. Originally, there was a discussion about whether there could be 2 full access points rather than emergency access and then one single entrance. And it was determined that the intersection would be too close for that. On the right-hand side of the development plan, you can see the access point and access gate. This was redesigned in order to accommodate for both fire life safety as well as utilities. There were concerns about having that access. And there's also, with these denser developments, there's also been problems with people parking in the emergency access, and then the life safety folks or whoever cannot gain access that way. And so if there is a problem with the primary entrance, there would be no other way for them to get in. So with reference to the staff recommendation for the preliminary subdivision plat, staff found that there is regard for the natural features and other assets. It is designed in the best interest for the public health, safety, and welfare. The infrastructure design improvements and dedication standards are met. And provided that the rezoning is approved, there will be no nonconformities. So once again, going back to that issue, there's only certain zoning districts that allow for setbacks to be determined by the development plan. And just to note, the setbacks as they were concerned before, the distance will be 20 feet between each building. So there will be a 10-foot setback and a dividing yard wall as well. And then with reference to the development plan, the Planning Commission has within its authority or is within its authority to approve the plan. Development will not adversely affect the public interest, provided that these changes are made. And the use in the buildings are compatible with adjacent structures and uses within the vicinity. And once again, this decision will not be final until the City Council finds and approves the general plan amendments, the rezoning, and the master plan amendment. And staff would like to add to that condition of approval that must be approved prior to final development plan and final plat. And that concludes my presentation.
Chair Clow, can you make sure your microphone is on, please? Thank you.
So in 2021, this came before the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the general plan amendment, the master plan amendment, and rezoning, but denied the preliminary development plan and the preliminary subdivision plan. Is that correct? Yes, I remember, I think that's what happened. And then City Council heard the general plan amendment, the master plan amendment, and the rezoning that we recommended approval of, and basically said they weren't going to address it until the Planning Commission addressed the preliminary development plan and the preliminary subdivision plan. Is that correct? So,
Chair Clow, I believe you're correct. I think I misspoke.
and I know, yes, so that's my understanding of what happened. So the Planning Commission recommended the approval of the three, the denial of the preliminary development plan and the preliminary subdivision plat. And as I remember, the concern was that those units were crammed together. I think there was 10 feet, or 5 feet, I think, between each of the units. And I think the setbacks were, there's kind of concern about the setbacks and the design and the yards. And the size of the yards and stuff. So could you address how this design is different than what was proposed before, or maybe the applicant can do that? I know one of the things I'm hearing is now there's 10 feet space between each unit when there was only 5 before, I believe. But I guess maybe the applicant would be best to address that.
And Chair Cloud, if I may point, this is what the units with that smaller setback look like across the street. But you are correct, there's a larger setback now, which affords for larger yard area. And it technically, as designed, will fit within the R6 zoning district. But the setbacks are what triggers the rezoning at this point.
Okay, any other clarification questions from? If not, we'll hear from the applicant, and it would be great if you could point out what was changed from the last design.
Okay. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Nathan Manzanares, and I'm with New Mexico Land Solutions at 915 Mercer Street, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Thank you, Heather, for your in-depth presentation. As Heather stated, this has a pretty lengthy history, but hoping to clarify some things. The biggest is, the dimensional standards that are required under an R10 in order to design the type of product that we're doing. You can't design attached townhome units under an R6 zoning. So the rezoning request was asked in order to finalize a design. And I'll do a comparison of what the 44 unit proposal looked like and the new and improved 40 unit proposal that really does enhance quality of life features that the Planning Commission wanted addressed. So as Heather stated, this project is located in between Governor Miles and Rail Runner Road. And here is a phasing plan of the overall Villas de las Solares. As stated, units 1 and 2 are to the west of the Rail Runner Road, and unit 3 is to the east. The intention of Villa Las Solares was always to provide the townhome product to the Las Solares area. It does provide a mix of housing types in the overall master planned area. Heather did a good job of talking about the history, so I'm not going to go into that too deep. But here, we did get a good response from the governing body that they do like this type of product, the attached townhouse product. But this is the original 44 lot layout. As you can see, the yards are a little bit smaller, and there's not as much on-street party parking, additional parking provided. With the new design, we have been able to incorporate more walkability, bigger lot sizes, and greater separation between units. So the yellow hatched line highlights all of the sidewalks that are proposed within the development. So basically anywhere in here, you have an alleyway or an access to either Rail Runner Road or Governor Miles that links to the city trail that's outlined in green. We had some good discussions with the MPO staff, Leah and Eric Awning earlier today, and we're actually going to do a trail connection in this area here between lot 29 and 30. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. So we're going to extend, actually, we'll wait on that. This is an outline of the new design that shows the new alleyways, the block walls that separate the units, the 20-foot increased distance between units. as well as these sidewalks throughout. So we do think that this is a good design, and it was actually approved in another Pulte project on the Caja del Oro project recently. And that project really spurred this design. That really helped with the quality of life issues that were brought up, and just really gives it more of a walkability for the public here. So as Heather stated, the product will be attached townhome units similar to what's in 1 and 2. This is that new trail that we talked about here. And in the packet, it states that there should be a pedestrian crossing along the northeast boundary. With the discussions with staff at MPO and highlighting all of those new sidewalk entries onto Governor Miles and Rail Runner Road, they've agreed to allow us to do a multi-purpose trail to the edge of our property that will line up with the planned Arroyo Chamisa Trail. And this is consistent with the overall trail master plan in Los Solares. So this is the edge of our property here. This trail right here on Embine to the north does not exist yet. The city will or is working on getting that established. But the trails to the west that run along Governor Miles do exist and run down Rail Runner Road as well. And I have some image shots here. So this is across Governor Miles in Unit 2, I believe. This is the trail, asphalt trail that is going to be extended along the boundary of Governor Miles on our track. So along here, there'll be a trail extended, and it'll continue down along with this existing sidewalk, and ultimately all the way down to the new connection for Arroyo Hondo. And that kind of concludes my presentation. If you have any other questions about the changes that were proposed, I'd be happy to answer them, or any other questions you have in regards to the overall development. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? If not, we'll open the matter up for public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to comment on this? If not, is there anyone on Zoom, Ms. Moore?
Chair Clow, at this point, I don't see anyone on Zoom with their hands raised.
Okay, so we'll close the public comment section of this hearing and open it up for comments or questions from the commission. Yes, Commissioner Smith?
I would direct this to either the staff or the presentation. I noted, it's really interesting, nobody wants to talk about the parts that have to do with the Santa Fe Homes program, and how you, thank you for including the 8 houses. And I would so note that I hope in 3 years it's more than that, but that's just me. How do you determine what affordable is for those 8 houses?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Smith, as stated, we are going to follow the 20% affordable housing regulation. There will be an affordable housing agreement drafted up with staff that has not been finalized, but that's going to be the next step after we go through the approval process. So I could let Maggie kind of speak to that, but it's forthcoming.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan, and Chair Clow, Commissioner Smith. So, I think Alexander Ladd is not here. So as Jason said, we don't want to talk for other, departments, but, as I understand it, the affordability is based on people's income. And so the homes are priced, at, affordability at those income ranges.
And Commissioner Smith, I think it's important to point out that every project is under the same requirements and rules. So, what Alexander Ladd has spoken to us before in terms of the 20% requirement, and then the qualifications and the cost of the units, every project is treated the same.
I appreciate that. Didn't mean in any way to imply that this isn't or it isn't. I appreciate in it. As I'm reading through things, I'm seeing 30%, 60%. There's a scale. And I just think if we go through staff to the others, it would help me to know how that scale is being applied in a uniform way. Because right now, I don't know that. It would just help me understand.
You mean the scale in terms of what an individual is charged for a particular house?
If there are 8 houses, are 2 done at 30% of median income for a family of 4, 2 done at 60%, 2 done at 90%? I mean, how is it?
Well, it's always 30%. As I understanding, it's always 30% of annual income. And everybody's income is different, so the cost of the houses are different. And I think that is probably determined by, and maybe Alexander Ladd can explain that to us, but it does.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Clow. I recall that it's, like you said, yeah, they're priced at different income ranges. I think there's 3 different income ranges. And then that's your percentage of the median income range, like how far below you are, or, so there's different prices, but it's all based on your income, and you have to qualify and get on the list to buy an affordable home in Santa Fe, to qualify for an affordable home. So, and I believe those details, we start with a proposal that is usually included within the packets. That's the first stage. And then they have to do an actual agreement, which Nathan mentioned, and that would be forthcoming after the development approval goes through. And that's more of a binding document.
It might be helpful at some point for us to have sample agreements so that we can sort of see how it's maybe been done in the past. So that provides us with a little bit more information.
I think this is fully sufficient, and I didn't mean to imply anything other than that. But to me, just being an inquisitive newbie, except I can't claim that much anymore, is if I'm a 60%er and there are 2 30%ers, who gets the house? Because the price is different.
I would assume that it's probably done by formula or whatever that.
I think Chair Clow, yeah. And I recall when we were looking at some other recent proposals, there are, if there are 10 affordable homes, a portion are set aside for the most affordable range, for the mid-range, and then for the, highest affordability range, I guess, if you will.
Right.
So, yeah, and those.
Each project has a certain number of ranges.
Right, that are going to serve the most, needed group, the middle group, and then based on individual's income. Yeah.
Yes.
Chair Clow, I would like to point out that in your packets, there was the draft Santa Fe Homes agreement in Exhibit B. And although there's a lot of text associated with it, there are some exhibits for income range 2, which is 50 to 65% of the AMI. There's going to be 2 units. For range 3, 65 to 80% of the AMI, there will be 2 units, 1 2-bedroom, 1 3-bedroom. And for income range 80 to 100% of the AMI, there's going to be 2 units that are 2 bedrooms and 2 units that are 3 bedrooms. And I failed to state that the 50 to 65% AMI, those are just be 2 bedrooms. And you can find that in your packet.
I feel marginally better that it took us 20 minutes to remember where that was. I got as far as the 8 houses. If I would just say, as we go forward, if there's a way to label the 8 or 10 reports that we read for every proposal, so we know what information is in what report. Because otherwise we're just reading them. It's like 140 pages and you got to find whatever you're looking for and you don't know where it is. So there's a little better way to index it. That would help me, but thank you. That's great. Just what I wanted to know.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lawrence.
Thank you. If I could, I'd like just a little bit of clarification and explanation on the connectivity of what you're building. So if you could, if you're able to put up the drawing that you had before of the lot layout, I think that would help me. So first, I'd like a little bit more explanation of the sidewalks and how wide they will be. Will there be walls? Are there walls entirely around the units? What will it be like to use those sidewalks for the people who might actually want to use them? Yeah, thank you. That's exactly right.
Okay, absolutely.
On those yellow lines, will there be walls on either side? How will they be set up?
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner Lawrence. So the original proposal right here, it did include interior sidewalks, but it did not have those access points. There were some, but nowhere near as many as what we're proposing now. But we do have the a cross section, if you will, of what it will look like here. So you do have your 6 foot wide sidewalk that's here.
So each side of the adjoined properties, each half will have a small piece of yard of their own personal property. There will be, is that a 5 foot wall?
Yes.
And then a 5 foot wall and then a sidewalk in between them, in between each of the properties. Okay. Will the properties to begin, I assume they can all build their own walls in front and in back later. Will they all be surrounded by wall? I mean, will people essentially be in a tunnel of wall as they walk through, or how will that work? How will that feel for the people who are there?
Well, not necessarily. Those walls are only 5 feet high, so it's not going to be a tunnel per se, but it will provide privacy to each homeowner, because there are going to be people that are utilizing that walkway while also providing that greater separation of 20 feet, which was a concern on the prior design, that there wasn't enough separation. So the wall acts as a buffer and increases separation and provides safety.
Yeah, and I appreciate the increased buffer. I think that that's important for the people who are living here. On another topic related to the connectivity, so this property is right along the side of an open property. You have a couple of cul-de-sacs here. You have a couple of alleys here. I don't know anything about that property next to you, but is there any consideration of possible connection? So we don't have walls and little tiny compounds.
So, Madam Chair, Commissioner Lawrence, I believe we're going to do some perimeter walls along the eastern boundary. So that connectivity really wouldn't happen. In a sense. There is the trails and plenty of walkability along Governor Miles and Rail Runner Road to get into the Los Solares trail system and Arroyo Hondo trail system.
So you're connecting to that trail on the northernmost point. Is there any trail connectivity going to the south, or is that getting on Rail Runner if you're moving south from where you are?
Let me see here. So, well, you can actually see it here. This trail here and this hatched area here.
Sorry, again, I can't see
I'm
your
sorry.
cursor, so I'm not.
Let me just go to the aerials that we have. So this trail here on the opposite side of Rail Runner runs all the way down Rail Runner. It's not on our side of the street per se, but it does run down and goes all the way down.
If you're a
Governor
resident
Miles.
who's interested in moving south, not by car, that's how you're going to do it.
Well, there is a crossing there that ties into, what is it, Redondo, that you can get onto. And there's also the sidewalks as well there.
Okay. Back on that picture, that looks like it could be approximately a 5 foot wall. Is that right? for comparison?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Lawrence, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. That helps. I don't think I have any further questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Chair Clow, I was concerned with reference to the recommendations that were rendered by the Planning Commission last time. And so I'm going to read the minutes. The full motion for these cases, there was discussion about the master plan being amended, and if the master plan could not be amended, then the rest of the project would not be able to proceed forward. And so with reference to the master plan amendment, Commissioner Sategna moved to deny because it fails to meet criteria 1. The master plan is consistent with the general plan regarding quality of life. In case number 2021-3814 general plan amendment, the Planning Commission recommends that the governing body deny because it fails to meet criteria number 2, consistency with other parts of the general plan based on the quality of life. In case number 2021-3815, the rezoning is denied because it fails to meet criteria number 3, that the rezoning is consistent with the applicable policies of the general plan, including the future land use map with regard to quality of life. And that was what the Planning Commission decided at that meeting.
And, okay, so the question I have, so the issue of the amendment to the development plan and the rezoning is not before us because that was before the city council, so we don't need to address it again. The city council will look at it in relationship to the fact that we moved to deny it, but they'll address those issues because they're ultimately the ones that decide that. But before they decide that, they wanted us to address the preliminary development plan and the preliminary subdivision plan. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Chair Clow. Just so the action for the Planning Commission tonight is just 2 motions relative to the subdivision plat and the development plan. The other actions, the recommendation of denial will stand when it goes to the the city council, but then the city council can vote accordingly based on what action takes place tonight with the.
Okay, I understand. Okay, thanks for that clarification. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
What are you moving? Yes. Okay, well, maybe somebody else can make a motion.
Here's a motion.
Four and 5.
Except it's the 4th.
Wait a minute. Why didn't somebody else make the motion if that's what it's going to take? I've served in state.
Well, I couldn't tell whether you were moving to approve or deny. Because you just said I make a motion. So move, but move what? Move to approve. Okay. That will do it, I think.
Second then.
Specify which case, please.
Okay, so we have 2 cases. We have case number 2022-6201, which is the preliminary subdivision plat, subject to conditions of approval and technical corrections in this report. So Commissioner Smith, are you moving to approve or deny that matter?
Seconding.
Okay, Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Commissioner Lucero,
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
And then the next matter is case number 2022-6202, Windmill Hill subdivision at 62. I'm sorry.
No, there were
6103.
There you go.
103. Now you got me confused. Okay, so we're at matter 2022-6103 preliminary subdivision plat. So Commissioner Smith, are you moving to approve or deny that matter?
Second.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Faulkner, Commissioner Lucero,
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to bring back a better plan.
Thank you. I think it worked well with you guys. Thank you all.
Okay, next we're moving on to staff communications.
Yes, Chair Clow, members of the commission. I just want to invite anyone listening or any of you to the open house for the Chapter 14 rewrite. We, held one online when we had a snow day back in February. And now we've rescheduled it for Monday evening from 6 to 8. It's going to be right next door at the convention center in the O'Keefe room. We will have food and translation services. Our consultants will be available, online. They're going to be presenting and, available to ask questions. And we hope we see, members of the community coming out to continue that discussion.
Any other matters from staff, matters from the commission? Ms. Faulkner, do you want to give us an update on the special committee?
So we've been having a little trouble meeting a quorum. So yes, is that better? That's better. So what I am doing as chair is I'm calling for kind of a team building meeting next Wednesday, where we're going to kind of regather and try to get some momentum back the committee. And then we'll have to identify if committee members can't commit to the time that's necessary to really work through what the policy committee has to work through. And we're going to have to consider members who can do the workload and who can be consistently involved.
And what project are you working on?
Well, I think right now, we're following staff's lead, and I think we're working on Chapter 14. We're also working on ENNs. That's one of I think we've come to pretty close to finishing that, right? I think we've come to a place where at least our work is close to being done on ENNs, so.
And would the ENN be something that would be separately addressed, or would it be addressed through the code rewrite?
I don't know, I yield to staff on that. It probably could be addressed in the code, but if we needed to expedite changing it for some reason, then I'm sure it could be addressed separately.
Jason, do you have some thoughts on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, thanks, Commissioner Faulkner. So as you may recall, I think the last big code issue that was addressed by the Planning Commission Policy Subcommittee was the cannabis ordinance, right? And so it was really great to have the brain trust of that committee to work through and develop that ordinance in a really short amount of time. So I've seen that's a really valuable use of the commission's time and resources if members are available. And so over the last 6 months or so, we've discussed them taking on the land use facilitation process, or quote unquote ENN process. I think that's shorthand, but it really is a land use, developing a land use facilitation process similar to the one they have in Albuquerque, more of the old model than what they're using now. But anyway, so that's what the policy subcommittee is currently working on. And so I'd really like to work with them to, work on these big projects. And then we do want to, once they're fully formed by the policy subcommittee, then we do want those to go into the pipeline, so to speak, for the code update And whether it's in phase 1, 2, or 3, probably in phase 2 for this one, for example. And there's also, there's a bucket where of things that we might want to do, prior to those phases being implemented. So this could, potentially fit into that one as well, depending on how it goes, but it does have to be coordinated with, several departments and divisions with the city. So yeah, that's what I'd like to, work on next. And then, maybe we can, for example, just look at an outdoor dining ordinance. I know that's something that everybody really wants to make happen sooner than later. I've got a list, but yeah, I hope that answers your question or helps,
Yeah, it does.
shed
I was
some-
just
shed some
wondering
light.
how we coordinate it with the rewrite of the code, if it's independent of that or coordinated with that.
So I think it will be, I think it's at our discretion, but I think it will be coordinated with the code update. Again, depending on what the subject matter is that they're addressing.
And I think it'd be helpful to have help from the Colorado experts too. It'd be helpful. Yeah.
So the hope is, Madam Chair, that we will reignite the passion of the policy subcommittee.
Well, I know it's really time consuming having sat on the cannabis one,
And I think that's one of.
like a full-time job.
Yeah, that's one of the issues is that the time it takes. We're having trouble getting all the members to commit to either responding to emails swiftly. Because I know when you two were on, I mean, we were responding to emails within an hour to 2 hours.
Yeah, because it was a time crunch. We
Exactly.
had a deadline.
And
but
so-
it was
Yeah, so I
a
think.
full-time job.
Yeah, and in fairness to the committee, it was the legislative session. My time was being eaten up. And it was a 60 days, so it was longer than, like a 30 days faster, obviously. So the hope is we can get the momentum backed up on the committee and then have a frank discussion with membership about their commitment to moving on postponing.
Thank you for that update. Any other matters from the commission? Are we having a meeting this month?
No, Chair Clow, I don't see a need to have a mid-April meeting. We'll be meeting in May.
So I do have to I want to reiterate this, and I've said it again and again and again. Why are we not using these meetings where we don't have cases to better educate the commission on affordable housing, to have discussions about how the packets could be better, there's lots of policy stuff we could be doing.
I think staff's been overwhelmed. It has been one of the issues, and I think having 2 meetings a month is, especially with the number of cases and with the Colorado experts being in town with the beginning of the rewrite is what I think. But I think there is a plan at some point to do some training, but I think staff needs to take a breather. So maybe they can let us know in terms of their timetable.
So I can't see the response from staff about what Chairwoman Cloud just said. Is that accurate?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilor Faulkner. I believe that in essence, that is accurate. So we're definitely interested in having these, working sessions with you all on the off weeks. There are 2 factors. We're still looking for, 2 replacements on the planning commission. So we are, occasionally we do have, challenges getting quorum. So I think that's one aspect. The second aspect is, yes, staff is extremely busy and, we're still working on, securing resources and, building the department staff wise. And so that is a challenge. So we, made the decision, I made the decision a few months ago to only, focus those second meetings for the time being on solely old business, and then, but yes, it's definitely our intention to not waste those meetings in the future, but we do need to, work up to that capacity and being able to do that. And we, Maggie, for instance, she is working on the, providing a, more broader resources for you all, as we've talked about in the past. And so we, once we can get that packet together, then we're, absolutely, we want to get that in front of you and do a working session and present that.
And one of the things I was thinking too is if the policy committee can get momentum and actually start doing some of the heavy lifting. Those second meetings where there aren't a lot of cases would be a good time for the policy committee to present to the full commission. And we could have discussions about different things that we would put forward as a commission and not really dig into the time that might slow up a case, for example. That is part of my thinking about the question. Yeah, when you come up. Is there anything we can do as commissioners to help? Is the budget, I mean, is there something on the budget we could advocate for?
I think it really helps if we move meetings along.
Anything on the budget we could help with? On the spot.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Faulkner, so the proposed budget is set for this year. I think that's, and we will be having budget hearings next week. So I think that's, the only answer that I'd like to give tonight.
And staff wise, how many staff are you down?
We're at,
Chair Clow, I'll talk for me. Sorry, Jason. We are trying to hire 2 senior planners and a planner position.
That's a lot.
and then I could just speak to the, department wide, we have an 18% vacancy rate right now, which is down from I think like 30 or 40% a few years ago. So we've definitely been building slowly but surely. And I think we have 66 positions and we're currently have 54 filled. And 2 of those, so yeah, and then so they're 14, but then 2 of those are actually being reclassified. So really, in essence, we're down 12, depending on how you look at it, 12 to 14.
So we understand why 1 meeting a month for now is significant.
I'll just add too, I think, Chair Clow and Commissioner Faulkner, the number of cases that we were experiencing going to governing body as well was really high. I think it's kind of, it's the last few months has maybe waned a little bit, but we do have, a number of, cases that will be going forward, from planning commission up to governing body. The Botoff rezoning, of course, we'll have to bring to planning commission or to governing body. And there's a few other, ones that are forthcoming. So that also creates a kind of untenable cycle for the small number of staff that we have who also, have things going on outside of work.
And I know some of those hearings were multi-night hearings too, so. Any other matters from the commission? If not, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you.